الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين إنه خير ناصر ومعين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد
وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من ليلتنا هذه إلى قيام يوم الدين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
My dear brothers, sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We've gathered here on the 9th night of the month of Muharram, inshallah, to commemorate the tragedy of Imam Hussein as-salam, as has been encouraged and taught to us by the Ahlul Bayt themselves. One of the things they also recommended that we do is on the day of Ashura, which inshallah will be on Thursday, that we should avoid attending to our normal worldly affairs, meaning like our work and our school, whatever it is normally that we would do when it comes to like earning an income or doing something towards that goal, and dedicate ourselves towards the commemoration of what took place on the day of Ashura in the plains of Karbala. And so as much as possible, we should see what we can do to rearrange our schedules to make sure we can participate in these important rites and rituals that will take place on that day. One of the very important rites is the Ziyarat of Ashura that we'll recite inshallah in the morning time. And through that, we can ready our souls for being able to then commemorate actually what happened. Of course, it's not something that's wajib. So if there's something that absolutely somebody cannot put aside, then they can do their best to inshallah take care of that and then attend the programs wherever they may be in the center or another center. But if there is a possibility, it's one of those things that is a symbol of the Shias, and it's a sign of the love that we have and the importance that we take the message of Imam Hussein Islam with. Brothers and sisters, over the nights we've been discussing by the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a hadith from our 6th Imam alayhi salam, in which he divides knowledge that is useful to know into 4 categories. Number 1 is knowledge of your Lord. Number 2 is knowledge of what He's done to you. Number 3 is knowledge of what He wants from you. And then the fourth category of things that we need to know is what is it that's going to take you away from your religion. And for the first 8 nights of the month of Muharram, we've been discussing the first 3 of these categories of what it is that we need to know. Now the question comes up, why is it that we even need to talk about the 4th category? Isn't it enough to just say, okay, I've established for myself that there is a God, He exists, and He is my Lord. And then I know what He's done with me, so I have an idea of the blessings that He's given to me and where He wants me to go to in terms of the goal. And then number 3, I've identified what responsibilities He's placed on me so that I can achieve that goal. Isn't that sufficient? Why do I need to talk about a 4th category of knowledge? So think about it for a bit. And what I'd like you to do is to now look at Islam and see whether Islam is complete with only the first 3, or whether we also need the 4th category in order to really have a true Islam. And in order for us to understand this, I want to take you to a tradition we have narrated from the 4th holy Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, in which he talks about what happened on the day of Ashura. And this is the wording that he uses. He says that on that day, there were 30,000 people, 30,000 men who went towards Karbala. كلهم يتقربون إلى الله سبحانه وتعالى بسفك دمه. All of them had an intention that they were getting close to God. So all the enemy forces, they wanted to get close to Allah by spilling the blood of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So this brings up some interesting questions. So what Imam alayhi salam is telling us is that these people actually thought that they were doing the right thing. But why were they thinking that? How could anybody in his right mind think that doing what they did to Imam Hussein and his family was actually justified? But this is the Imam telling us that this is the case. So if we put these together and we analyze it, the conclusion we come to is that the people who were there, part of this enemy forces, they had a very distorted notion of Islam. And what they believed wrongly was that because they received the order from the Khalifa at that time, that they had to go and march as part of this army, then that was enough for them. That was enough justification to do what they did. But the problem was they never realized that that Khalifa himself was not appointed by God. And therefore, taking orders from him and obeying those orders itself was something that God did not want them to do. And they had never identified that this individual was somebody who was actually taking them away from their religion. So this highlights for us the importance of the 4th category of knowledge, which is knowing what or who or what sort of policies are going to take us away from the religion. You know, if you look at it, it's just a logical level. If we have a path in front of us, it's not enough to just know what the path entails, but we also have to know, okay, along this path, what are the pitfalls? What are the obstacles that are going to come in our way as we try to advance down this path? That's at a logical level. It's the same thing when it comes to the path of perfection or the path of obedience and subservience to God. Anybody who wishes to take this path will definitely come across forces and opponents, because this is the way that God has created this world. Now let's go to a tradition we have from the 6th Imam alayhi salam, and he puts this to us in a very simple and clear way. He says that the Bani Umayyah is the name of the tribe that was in charge during that time of the Muslim Ummah. This is the tribe of Muawiyah and Abi Sufyan, etc. He says that Inna Bani Umayyah atlaqu ta'alim al-iman. Bani Umayyah would freely allow people to learn about Iman. Right? So that covers the first 3 categories. People could learn about God, His attributes, what are the acts that we need to do, how to perform Hajj, how to tie your ihram, how to do wudu, all these rules and regulations and these things which are positive, no problem. أطلقوا تعليم الإيمان. They didn't have any problem with that. But وَلَمْ يُطْلِقُوا تَعْلِيمَ الشِّرْكِ. They would not allow shirk to be taught. What that means is that they would never allow people to talk about, okay, this is fine, this is the religion that you have, but you should know that this is the opposite of what we just told you right here. They wouldn't allow you, people could talk about, okay, that God is there, we should follow the prophets, the imams, but nobody could ever say that, well, an example of somebody that you should not follow is a leader who has been appointed unjustly. Why did they do this? لِكَيْ إِذَا حَمَلُوهُمْ عَلَيْهِ لَمْ يَعْرِفُوهُ. They did this so that if the leaders of Bani Umayyah were to impose shirk upon the people, they wouldn't know that it's shirk. They would think that this is part and parcel of the religion. And that's exactly what happened in Ashura. That they made it seem like this was their religious duty, and all these people, because of the lack of understanding they had about the religion, because of them turning away from the Ahlul Bayt and that source of taking the religion, which was the pure and correct source, they took it. And this shirk of following an authority that does not have that authority, that was something that they accepted as part of obedience to God. Okay, now why is this important for us to know? Brothers and sisters, first of all, when we are trying to learn about Islam, or we're trying to teach Islam to other people, for example, our children, alongside teaching them about what Islam tells us to do and what our beliefs are, we have to be very clear and have an open discussion about those things in our society which stand opposed to God and which can take somebody away from the religion. These need to be discussed with importance at our Sunday schools and Islamic schools. They need to be identified. And these type of things, it's hard to put them into a curriculum because they change. Every so often you have a new trend coming in, a new form of deviating ideology or deviating practices. And we need to be on the watch for these things and point them out and be vigilant. Because it's not a matter of just knowing what it is that's going to take us away from our religion, but we also have to stay away from that as well too. And inshallah, what I'd like to do tonight is talk about a couple of these examples of things like this in our society, so that inshallah it's very clear for us, and then we can inshallah generalize that to other things as well too. This message is captured in the Quran very beautifully. In Surah An-Nahl, Surah number 16, verse number 36, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. God says that we sent forth a messenger in every nation, and all the messengers had one motto in common. There's one message that they wanted to convey. What was the message? Number one is that you have to worship God, worship Allah. But it's not just that. The messengers didn't come just to say that, okay, worship God. They said, come and worship God, and وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. Stay away from the taghut. Stay away from this thing called taghut. Now, what is taghut? I'm sure everyone has heard of that term before because we recite it often as one of these verses that we recite. Which verse do we hear this in often? Taghut? Ayatul Kursi. In Ayatul Kursi, we say, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي فمن يكفر بالطاغوت ويؤمن بالله فقد استمسك بالعروة الوثقى. God is telling us that if somebody wishes to hold firm to that handle which will prevent them from slipping into the world, slipping into passions and lust and misguidance and all the different temptations that come up as part of life in this world, the only thing that they can do is they can hold firm to this handle. Now, how can they? What is the means by which they can get access to this handle? They have to do two things. Number one is man yakfur bit taghut. Somebody has to disbelieve in the taghut, deny the taghut, disassociate with the taghut. And second of all, they have to yu'min billah, believe in God, believe in Allah. Now, before I explain what taghut is there, it's interesting. One of the commentators on the Quran, he makes a point which I thought was very relevant. He says that Allah in this verse does not say وَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالشَّيْطَانِ وَيُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى. God doesn't say that whoever disbelieves in Satan and then believes in God, then he has or she has held firm to this handle. No. God uses the word taghut. And the reason is because sometimes shaitan is used to mean Iblis. Iblis, of course, is the name of that one jinn who, after he refused to prostrate to Adam upon the command of God, he was cast away from that spiritual station, and then he took it upon himself to be the arch enemy of humankind in terms of their progression to God. Sometimes shaitan means Iblis. Sometimes shaitan means something more general, and it means any entity that is taking us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything other than Allah. That is a force of misguidance. Taghut is a similar term. Taghut is something which has a wider meaning than just shaitan, meaning Iblis. A taghut is somebody or something which has done tughyan. You see that in Arabic it sounds similar, right? Taghut and tughyan. Tughyan means, roughly, it means, in a loose translation, it means rebellion. And so a taghut is somebody who is a rebel. What does it mean for somebody to be a rebel from the Quranic perspective? It means it's somebody or some entity that Allah has bestowed this person with some gifts, like say power and wealth. What they do with these gifts, instead of putting them to use in the way God wanted them to, and being subservient to God by means of these gifts, by means of these blessings, they take these blessings and they war against God. And then they start to take other people away from God as well too. Like some of the examples we have in the Quran are people like Fir'aun, right? People like Haman, people like, the various, the bad guys of the Quran, okay? The bad guys who took their power and their wealth and their positions and maybe their family status, and what they did with this is, instead of using them to get closer to Allah, to listen to the message of the prophets, they would take these things and take other people and misguide them as well. Take them right along and take them out of their religion. So the taghut is, this commentator says, the reason why Allah uses the word taghut is because it's up to us to identify in every time and era, where is the taghut? Who is the taghut? And this is part of our responsibility as a Muslim. If we just say shaitan, then everyone agrees that, yeah, shaitan is a bad guy, we're going to stay away from shaitan. But it's when we say taghut and we start asking this question, okay, where is that taghut? Who is the taghut of my era right now? So that I can identify him, identify his policies, and make sure I am not afflicted by them as I'm trying to accomplish my goal, which is to act upon the responsibility that God has given me. Please say salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So just to summarize, the taghut is somebody who has taken the blessings of God and rebelled with them, and is now using these blessings in a way to war against God by taking people who would otherwise go to God and throwing them off the path, taking them away from the religion. Okay? Now, if we want to analyze what are the different types of taghut, and by the way, taghut, when we're talking about this fourth part of the tradition, ma yukhrijuka min dinik, that which takes you away from your religion, the taghut is the answer to that. That which takes you away is the taghut. Taghut is the enemy. The taghut, enemy towards perfection. Now, if we want to look at and analyze taghut according to what area do they focus on in order to take away innocent souls and swerve them away from the path of righteousness, we can divide them into many categories, but what scholars have done is they've analyzed this based on Quran and Hadith and also experience, and they say that there's two main categories of taghut. Sometimes you can have somebody who gets to earn both titles, but otherwise you can say that, okay, roughly speaking, there's two major categories. Number one is a taghut, a rebel who is a rebel from an economic perspective, meaning somebody in a society who economically leads people to away from God, leads people to hell, all right, leads people to destruction by economically oppressing them and taking their wealth and making them worship wealth, or whatever strategy they take. The point is, through wealth, it's the case that they're able to misguide the servants of God. The other category is not economic, but rather it's political. It's by taking on different forms of leadership, somebody is able to use that position to get people to follow him, or in some cases her, and that in that way they go and mislead people. Alaikum assalam. The tyrants, the dictators, all these people in society and in history that who are become famous for taking people and running them to the ground. So two major categories, and if we look at it, of these two, it's been said that actually if somebody is a political tyrant, a political taghut, that actually stems from them being an economic tyrant, meaning what motivates them at the end of the day is the financial reason. And that's why they go and they take on these political roles. So tonight what I'd like to do is to discuss a little bit about the economic tughyan and taghut of our time. And inshallah tomorrow I'd like to discuss, if Allah gives us the tawfiq, a little bit about the political taghut of our time. Now, as far as the economic taghut, what we're doing here is trying to understand what, I'm not going to name a name here because it's not a name, it's much more sophisticated than that. But what ideology is prevalent in our society, where we as Muslims have to be very much aware of it, because it's a taghuti ideology when it comes to economics. We have to be aware of it, and then we have to make sure that we do not adopt it, and we stay away from it. Because this is our responsibility according to these various traditions and verses that I quoted to you. I'd like to make a point here, brothers and sisters, and it's a very key point. We as Muslims should not be okay with just living here and saying that, okay, if we're able to pray and have our functions, our Thursday night gatherings, for example, and our Sunday school, then we've done our job. We shouldn't be okay with that and say that that's all, that's it. Okay, we've done our prayers, we've established that, we established our centers. Because if we say that that's it, then what we're saying is that Islam and the practice of Islam is just limited to these things. But as we've learned here, it's not just about that. Islam is a complete religion. And when it comes to other areas as well, we can't just take whatever is being done in the society and say that just because it's being done, we can apply that as well too. So we shouldn't just sit back and say, okay, I'm happy now, alhamdulillah, I was able to make my children into Muslims who are practicing, they fast, they pray. That's a great accomplishment, alhamdulillah. But there's still room to grow, because we need to make sure that we're very much aware and have that insight as to how it is that we differ. We're not going to succumb to everything that's being done. We need to do our own things in some cases, and then help to teach other people as well too about the righteousness and the reality of these sorts of things. Anyhow, one of when it comes to the economic policies of the rebel, okay, that the forces that are at work to take people away from God, one of the economic policies that we're seeing that's very much prevalent, that we're all aware of, is something along the lines of consumerism and materialism. And it's something it's worth our thinking about this for a few moments and understanding how much do we as Muslims recognize this to be something against what Islam says, and how much are we working to not make sure that we get trapped in that and follow practices other than that and educate other people about that as well too. Because it definitely is the case that what Islam teaches us is not what's being taught to us in the world right now when it comes to gaining wealth, acquiring wealth, spending wealth. Let me quote to you, or let me just share with you some of the observations that somebody can make about the way that we are being told to deal with our money and our funds. One of the things is that there's a tendency, living here in the West, of somebody wanting to earn more and more, and then spend more and more as well. And it's something that as the income increases, somebody gets more experience, they rise up the corporate ladder, they get better jobs, their investments start to work out for them, they acquire more businesses, whatever it may be. So we see that spending also increases. And this is something which is actually very much encouraged by the society. Now, from the Islamic perspective, there's nothing wrong with spending and making money. Okay, this is something which is good. Sometimes we're told that actually we should spend more. It's good to spend even beyond our need when it comes to our family and giving them a little bit extra. But everything is within its limits. And when spending is done not out of need, but simply out of simple pleasure, right, that's when we know that we have got caught in the trap. And this is, the thing to notice about this is that the messages are being pumped to us at every angle. You know, if you've noticed the way that advertisements on the web have become more and more sophisticated over the years. Right now, if you buy one product, for example, on Amazon.com, that's it. You're sucked in. And they'll know what you bought, and they'll be like telling you, okay, now you need to buy this, and you have to buy this, and you have to buy this. And who knows, maybe even I wouldn't be surprised if they predicted, you know, the shelf life of the product that you have right now, and just, you know, that many months later, they'll start, you know, pitching you the same product, but the next version of it. Because obviously, you know, they want you to buy that from them. So, yeah, so this type of practice is something which it's being pushed at us. We have to be aware of it and make sure we don't get sucked into it. We should not let our spending be dictated by others. Because after all, we have so many traditions, and it's also something that's in the spirit of the Quran as well too, that one of the characteristics of a believer is that a believer knows how to balance his expenditure. You know, like this is part of our faith, that we're balanced people when it comes to our spending. If we have more income that is coming in than what we need to spend, well, that's God's amana. It's His trust to us. And now we need to figure out what we can do with that extra funds in the way that is most pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, one of the ways that we need to consider using this extra wealth is in the way of charity. And charity in the general meaning applies to any type of good cause, whether it be, you know, like the centers, you know, the different projects that are going on. But in its specific meaning of sadaqah, it applies to giving to people who are poor. And one of the other byproducts of the society that we're in, and the way that these images are being bombarded to us, and how we're being pressured to get everything we have and spend it on ourselves, one of the byproducts of that is that people are forgetting about the needs of people who are less wealthy. And whereas we as Muslims should be bleeding with the pain that they're facing. There's a story that's told about Imam Khomeini rahmatullahi alayhi, that one time, you know, this was back in the time that you know, he was in Iran. They were showing pictures on the television of people who were starving in the African countries. I think this was a crisis in the early 1980s, I believe. Anyhow, they were showing these pictures, right? And Imam Khomeini rahmatullahi alayhi, he happened to be, you know, in that area, and his eyes fell on the TV. He was so overcome with pain and emotion by the images that he was seeing on TV that they had to go and unplug that TV before he lost himself. Right? This is the emotion a true mu'min, a true believer should be feeling the pain. And in particular, when we see Muslims, in particular when we see followers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam facing these types of situations. I mean, brothers and sisters, if you're not aware, I can introduce you to like legitimate organizations that go and evaluate the situation on the ground. For example, in Pakistan after the floods, in Afghanistan after being, you know, tortured and being destroyed by whatever forces have come in and done whatever the crimes they've done in that land. I mean, the situation of the Shias is so desperate. Yet we find that, generally speaking, if you talk to an average young person, with no offense to anybody, but just generally speaking, an average young person, they do not have a sense of compassion for these people. And that's part of the activities of the Taghut. It's part of the system. Because as soon as somebody starts to think about that, then that wealth, that extra wealth doesn't get funneled back into the system and supporting the system and propping it up and feeding those who benefit from it. Please say salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. This idea of complacency, of not really caring, of just making, if our money is coming in, then we're okay with the status quo. We find that same thing happening in Karbala as well too. Imam Hussein Islam, what happened is, before he went to Karbala, as you know, he had to leave Medina, he went to Makkah. And in Makkah, various people would come to him. Some people would be wanting to know why he's going. Sometimes they would agree to join him. Other people would go there and they would try to convince him that, you know what, you're not doing the right thing. One of these people was somebody by the name of of Abdullah, the son of Umar. And Abdullah ibn Umar, he goes to Imam Hussein, he says that, I think you should make peace with Yazid, alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah. You should make peace with him, right? What you're doing is not, it's not the right thing. So Imam Hussein Islam tells him two things. And I believe that within these two things, there's a mountain of wisdom. And really, if we want to know what the message of Imam Hussein Islam is, it's very profound what he says. He says, first of all, he gives a story. He says that there were, he says that, the name of this, yes, he says, Abu Abdul Rahman. He says, do you not know that that one of the worst things that happen in this world is what happened to the head of the prophet Yahya? Okay, Yahya was, as you know the story of Yahya, he was a prophet of God, he was the son of Zakaria. He was a very pious individual, and he was loved by many people in his country. This was in modern day Palestine. And what happened was that the story of Yahya, just in brief, is that Yahya came to know that the king of that country wished to marry his niece. And this was an act of incest, right? And it was not allowed in the law. The king wished to marry his niece, and it was for worldly reasons. The niece's mother wanted this marriage to happen so she could get ownership, get control of the government, and get wealth and get power this way. And so the king was about to do this, and Yahya was speaking out against this. And eventually, they duped the king into ordering the martyrdom of Yahya. And so they went and they killed Yahya. They cut off his head and they brought it on a platter and presented it to the king. Anyhow, Imam Hussein Islam brings this example to Abdullah, the son of Umar. And he wants him to be aware of something very important, which is that Islam is not about complacency. When we see something being done wrong, we have to speak out against it. We have to identify it. We have to be observant over these things. We have to identify it, and then we have to speak out. And he's trying to tell something to Abdullah. He's trying to tell him that if you're going to remain silent and not join me, or if you want me to do that, then here's Yazid and see what he's doing. We have to speak out against this. And then he gives another example. He says that there was a time when among the Bani Israel, between the dawn time and the sunrise time, they killed 70 prophets of God. And then after killing 70 prophets of God, they went to their markets and they started buying and selling and trading as if nothing had happened. Right? And this is a historical thing that the Imam al-Islam is telling us about. They acted كَأَنْ لَمْ يَسْمَعُوا شَيْئًا. They acted as if nothing had happened. Why? Because their wealth was coming in. The system, the economic system was there in order, and because it was making them satisfied, it was enough to cloud out any type of guilt or any type of awareness about the political crimes that were being accomplished. There's lessons here, brothers and sisters. Is that we shouldn't get caught up, because if we do that, perhaps we could fall prey to the same thing, where we would be busy in the economic side and not realize what's happening on the political side. And then finally he tells Abdullah, the son of Umar, he says that I advise you to have taqwa of Allah and do not leave aside helping me. And he puts an ultimatum on him. He says that I've given you this hujjah and now you come and join me. So brothers and sisters, this is a bit about the economic, the notion of the economic taghut, the economic rebel. That force through which it's through its economic means will cause somebody to get away from the religion. We have to make sure that we combat against this by making sure that the wealth that we have is something that we, first of all, acquire in a halal way. and then we pay our wajib duties on this wealth. The khums money is something which is a test for the Shias. It's a test which, separates the men from the boys, the women from the girls. Because it's hard to take wealth that you have, that you consider as your own, and then take it out, take money away from it. But this is part of understanding what Islam is about. This wealth does not belong to us, it belongs to the Imam of our time. And what right do we have to keep that within our wealth? And then the extra wealth that we have to make sure that we're funneling it in the right way. We have to make sure that we do not get attached to our possessions in a way that we get distracted from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Please say salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Tonight, we'd like to, inshallah, spend a few moments remembering the story of the martyrdom of the first member of the Ahlul Bayt to give his sacrifice on the day of Ashura. Ali Akbar alayhi salam was one of the sons of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And he was somebody who was very much loved by the Ahlul Bayt. We see from the saying of Imam Hussein alayhi salam that they loved him so much because of his similarity to the Prophet of Islam, both from an outer perspective and an inner perspective. It's one thing to look like the Prophet of Islam, but it's another thing to be like the Prophet of Islam when it comes to the heart, the character, and the soul. But we have a tradition that Imam Hussein Islam says, when we longed to talk to the Prophet of Allah, we would talk to Ali Akbar. When we longed to see the Prophet, we would look and find and see, where's Ali Akbar? We would find him and look upon him and gaze upon him. And then when we wanted to experience that character of the Prophet, that perfection, that sirajan munira, that illuminating lantern that the Quran describes him at, what would we do? We would go and experience the character of Ali Akbar alayhi salam. We know from what happens in the incident of his martyrdom that there must have been a very special attachment that his sister, his young sister, Sakina alayhi salam, had with him. And not only that, his auntie Zainab, salamullahi alayha, she must have loved her nephew so dearly for her to be so affected by his martyrdom. So this is somebody who is very special, who is going to be martyred as the first martyr of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And he is somebody who understands something which is very important. He understands what is the role of life and what is the role of death. Many people are scared of death. But if we were to understand that our job in existing is to do nothing but to perform the responsibility of God on us, then if we understand that death also can become a responsibility, as it is the case with Ali Akbar, then there's no fear involved, as long as we are trying our best to fulfill that responsibility. See what he says to Imam Hussein Islam. Before they arrive at Karbala, Imam Hussein sees a spiritual vision in which he sees a horseman crying out, saying that you are going forward and you are going and hurrying towards a destination, but at the same time, death is going towards you. When Imam Hussein Islam is awoken from the spiritual vision, he starts to cry out, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Surely we are from Allah, and it is to Him we are returning. The whole camp is wondering, why is Imam Hussein saying this? What new revelation has come? What is up? Ali Akbar is the one who goes and approaches him. And he says, Oh my father, what has happened? Why are you saying this? What is making you praise Allah and say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un? His father tells him that I saw a rider come to me in my sleep, and they said that these people are proceeding further while death is advancing towards them. I perceived that they were our spirits informing us of our death. Ali Akbar says, Oh my dear father, May your Lord never bring you evil. But are we not on the right? Alasna ala al-haq? Aren't we doing the right thing? Imam Hussein responds, of course we are, by him whom all servants return. In that case, Ali Akbar says, إِذَنْ لَا نُبَالِي بِالْمَوْتِ. We are not going to care or have any fear about dying as long as we are on the right path. Brothers and sisters, we don't have to achieve the highest levels of perfection. Maybe we don't have that much time in our lives to do so. We don't have the ability. We don't have those possibilities made available to us. But we at least have to be on that path and trying our best. That's what God wants us. That's what God wants us to do. As long as we're trying our best. If we're on the path of righteousness, then we do not fear death, because we shall surely die on the right. Imam Hussein is so pleased by this answer of his son that he says that the reward that is due to you is not something that I can give you, but I can ask Allah to reward you abundantly, the reward that is due to you, the reward that a father would like to give you, but he cannot give you. Now let us go to the plains of Karbala, the day of Ashura. We see that the sacrifice of the companions has taken place. The companions, while they were alive, they would never let their masters go on the battlefield. Because after all, these were the true Shia of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. They would give up everything. They wouldn't say things like, Bi abi anta wa ummi. May my mother and myself and my father be sacrificed for you, O Imam. They wouldn't just say that, they would mean it. They would not let any of the Ahlul Bayt go onto the battlefield until all of them had given up their lives. But now they have all gone. It has come time for Ali Akbar to go and seek permission to go on the battlefield. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah al-Husayn. Sallallahu alayka ya ibn Rasulullah. Sallallahu alayka wa ala ibnika Ali ibn al-Husayn al-Akbar. Ali Akbar alayhi salam goes to the battlefield seeking permission for his father. His father looks at him, immediately says, it is okay, you can go. Why is Imam Hussein alayhi salam not delaying permission? Perhaps he wants to show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when it comes to sacrificing, he will not hold back even his own son. But after he gives permission to Ali Akbar, his eyes filled with tears, he casts his head away and he cries out, it is very difficult for me to bear this. He then raises his hands to the skies and says, Allahumma ashhad, O Allah, be witness of the cruel oppression of these men towards whom goes this handsome youth who most resembles your Prophet in looks and nature and his speech. When we longed to see your Prophet, we used to look at his face. I do not know how this enemy army, what kind of people were they to be able to fight against somebody who was a manifestation of the Prophet of Islam and they called themselves Muslims. Ali Akbar goes and begins the fighting. He fights very valiantly. There's no one who can stop him. According to some reports, 80 of the soldiers are killed. No one can do anything. And then we see Ali Akbar alayhi salam is coming back to his father. Oh Ali Akbar, what is it that you want from your father? He tells him, oh my father, I have come back to you and this is the reason. He says, Ya abati al-atashu qad qatalani wa thiqlu al-hadidi qad ajhadani fahal ila shurbatin min al-ma'i sabil. Oh my father, the thirst has killed me and the weight of the iron has taken away my strength. If only I could have some water. After all, Imam Hussein alayhi salam is a father and his son is requesting something for him. Imagine how difficult this must be. He tells him, Ya bunay, oh my dear beloved son, يعز على محمد وعلي وعلي أن تدعوهم فلا يجيبون. It is very difficult for on Muhammad and Ali ibn Abi Talib and myself that you should ask them for something and they cannot respond to you. But do not worry, go back and fight, and in a little while your own grandfather will be the one to quench your thirst, and after that you will never be thirsty again. He returns to the battlefield and fights a very fierce battle until a man by the name of Munqidh La'natullahi alayhi decides to strike him with a spear. Ali Akbar falls upon the neck of his horse and he cries out at this point, Ya Abata! Oh my father, alayka salam, peace be upon you. Hada jaddi yuqri'uka salam. This is my grandfather, he is bidding you salam. وَيَقُولُ لَكَ عَجِّلِ الْقُدُومَ عَلَيْنَا. He is telling you, hurry up and come to us. But now where is this horse going to go with Ali Akbar who is injured? Is it going to go back to Imam Hussein alayhi salam? No. It is going right into the midst of the enemy soldiers. They all draw their swords and together they begin to strike. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. The narrators of history report what happened to Ali Akbar at this point. They say, فَقَطَعُوهُ بِسُيُوفِهِمْ إِرْبًا إِرْبًا. With their swords they took and they cut him up piece into pieces. At that point, Imam Hussein rushes to him, but it is too late. He puts his cheek on the cheek of Ali Akbar and he says, عَلَى الدُّنْيَا بَعَدَكَ الْعَفَا. There is no worth living in this world after you, O my son. When Sakina finds out what has happened to her brother, she cannot bear the difficulty. Imam Hussein alayhi salam has to tell her, Oh Sakina, ittaqillah wasta'amilni as-sabr. Have taqwa of Allah and be patient. Maybe He knows how many other difficulties Sakina will have to bear. This is just the beginning of such a long afternoon and what has to come after that. Sakina responds saying, Ya abada, kayfa yasbiru man qatila akhuha wa sharrida abuha. Oh my father, how can somebody whose brother has been killed as such be patient? He says, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And then there is Sayyidah Zainab, who comes out to mourn her nephew's death. But it is not easy for her. She cries out, Ya Habiba, oh my beloved one, oh the son of my brother. She goes and flings herself on the body of Ali Akbar. Imam Hussein has to come and take her away and take her back to the tents of the women. Ala la'natullahi ala al-qawmi al-zalimin. Wa saya'alamu alladhina zalamu ayya munqalibin yanqalibun.